Rubbish movie. So many plot holes. I don't understand why this film is so highly rated. The film has so many plot holes in it I actually lost count. Now before I start this review, I'm not going to say toys talking is a plot hole. The idea of them talking is interesting, but it opens up so many other questions that the movie never really explains. Also, don't argue, it's a kids movie. Films need to make sense in order to work, whether they're for kids or not. This film is so bad, and here is why. Even if you like this film, you have to agree with some of the points I'm making here. Buzz thinks he's a space ranger. If that is the case, then why does he allow Andy to play with him? Does he not think, why is this giant kid picking me up and throwing me around? Buzz, however, makes no attempt to communicate with Andy. Surely Buzz would try and talk to him. This doesn't make sense given that Buzz doesn't believe he's a toy. Also, when Woody hits a button that releases Buzz's helmet and he gasps for air, you're telling me Andy never pushed that button? He's owned the toy for weeks yet hadn't pressed all the buttons. Rubbish. The end scene is one of the worst scenes for me. It's broad daylight and two toys are running down a street. Where are all the pedestrians on the street? How are they able to open the back of the moving van truck? Surely the driver would notice, doesn't he check his rear view mirrors? Or surely a button or signal would come up revealing that a door was open at the back of his truck. Wow. Any thief could steal from this useless driver. Also, when Woody and Buzz fly down from the sky and land in Andy's car. Andy's car is directly in front of the truck driver. How could he possibly not see this? The most hilarious scene though is when Woody is moving around in the middle of the road and a person in a car honks at him. Woody then ducks in front of the car as it drives over him. 1. Why would you sound your car horn if there was a toy in the road? 2. The driver therefore saw Woody as he sounded his horn. 3. He must have seen Woody moving about and be thrown from the moving van. Does this driver know toys are alive or something? Is it only kids who are unaware? I just don't understand. It's never fully explained. Continuing this point, when the toys all surround Woody and prepare to attack him after he knocks Buzz out the window, we hear Andy from outside shouting. This allows them to return into position. What if he hadn't have shouted though? He would have walked in and seen them. This is why this idea of toys coming to life could never work. No kid would always shout when they enter their room, and most kids leave the doors open, yet Andy never does, allowing the toys to move around and communicate. Once you take these plot holes into account, the conclusion is that the film sucks and is a really poor movie. Honestly, how could anyone like it? An interesting idea that just falls flat. And also, the final question that is never addressed is, why can't toys reveal they're alive to humans? It's never explained and I don't get why. Poor film. 1 star. Awful.
This movie was absolutely horrible and way too overrated. My daughter was crying the whole time and started having a seizure. We took her to the hospital and the doctors said she had a seizure because of unknown stressor. I told them that we had a very calm day and were watching a movie when it happened. The doctor recommended keeping her away from anything related to Toy Story, but it is so hard. Because everyone loves it so much. Anytime we see anything Toy Story related, I worry about the health of my poor daughter. 0 out of 10 experience. I hope everyone boycotts this movie.
Moronically atrocious. How this has been rewarded monumental praise by almost everyone is beyond me. I never saw this in the cinemas. 10 years after its release, I finally decided to give it a shot. Basically, Woody gets taken away, Buzz brings him back home, everyone lives happily ever after, the end. That is all. It really is that predictable. There is absolutely nothing redeeming in this film. The animation hasn't aged too well. The voice acting is poor. Joan Cusack is the worst offender. The direction is extremely shoddy. The musical number makes you want to tear your eardrums out. But the absolute worst thing about this film? The script. Calling it an affront to humanity would be an understatement. There are some truly awful moments of dialogue, stupid sequences that amount to nothing whatsoever, some of the most unoriginal, pathetic film references that have no relation to the storyline whatsoever, just there for pop culture reference. They're not even done with any subtlety, they're just there for the sake of it. It's not even funny, it's a giant groan fest as lame after lame bits of wisdom fly from every toy's mouth. Cheesy and dull one-liners are uttered so often you really will want to kill yourself. Even some of the supposed adult jokes are just plain silly and shouldn't even be there. This was a painfully awful, horrid, boring waste of my life. I don't care what anyone says, this was a terrible, terrible film. I can honestly say that this is one of the worst films I have ever seen in my life. There is nothing good I could possibly say about this. At least other supposed terrible films are so bad they're good. But Toy Story 2 has no redeemable qualities. Like Michael Corleone at the end of Godfather Part 2, there is no redemption for it. Now, Godfather Part 2, that's an amazing sequel. Check that film out once again. Avoid this worthless pile of vomit.
Like the original. Awful. Having seen the awful Toy Story, be sure to see my review of that. I hope that the filmmakers would have learned from their mistakes and produced a film that actually required you to have an IQ above 10 to enjoy it. Clearly the makers failed and didn't take on feedback from before. Car crash. Let's start with that horrible sequence in which the toys cross the road hidden under cones. Lots of cars spin out of control and crash into each other. It's a huge collision. Yet only an hour or so later, when the toys cross the road again, there is no damage whatsoever. Surely a crash that big would take days to clear up, not to mention the amount of news reporters covering the scene. How can the filmmakers not have noticed this major plot hole? Security cameras. I know 1999 is still in the period when humans were dumb, but we had basic cameras back then. For some reason, these security cameras don't pick up toys breaking about and moving in a toy store. Likewise, they don't appear to exist in airports, as the toys steal a luggage cart and escape through locked gates without being stopped. How was this not noticed? Why wasn't there a massive inquiry? It's ludicrous that the filmmakers missed this. New toys? When Andy returns, Jessie and Bullseye are now part of his toy collection. Yes, we hear him shout, "Thanks, Mom," but I highly doubt that would be the end of it. Surely he would have brought this up later to her and she would have been confused as to what he meant. They would then ultimately discover and believe that these toys appeared from nowhere and ended up in Andy's room somehow. Admittedly, believing the toys are alive wouldn't be their first belief as to how they got there, but they would still inquire and presumably call the police about a creepy intruder delivering toys to Andy's room. This scene must have not made the final cut of the film. There are other plot holes that I really can't be bothered to mention. Mainly a toy horse catching up with both a plane and a luggage cart. The fact that toys can safely break into an airport without being spotted by security or security cameras, and the fact that we still have no answer as to why toys can't reveal they're alive to humans. An awful film made by idiots who still haven't learnt from their prior mistakes. 1 out of 10.